The NASCAR season ready to kick off as we head to the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway, coming up here in just a little bit. A lot of movement, not just within the NASCAR Xfinity and Cup Series drivers, but also all across the booth. And this is someone who knows a little bit of everything about the world of NASCAR. This is the Inside Lane. I'm your host, Devon Henry, and joining us here on the Inside Lane, he's a motorsports broadcast veteran of nearly 25 years, a co-star of the hit movie Logan Lucky, and the voice of the NASCAR Xfinity Series for the past decade. The play-by-play voice of NASCAR on the CW. From Madison, Indiana, it's Adam Alexander. Adam, thanks for joining me.
Devin, I always love your intros, man. It fires me up and it makes me sound way better and way more important than I really am. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I would say you're pretty dang important. You have been an absolute icon of NASCAR motorsports. I mean, go back to Winton. I know we talk a lot about NASCAR. I remember watching World Outlaw highlights with you when you're doing everything at Speed Channel. And now here you are, still a big shot, Cup Series announcing, full-time Xfinity Series announcing, and obviously all that news coming really within like the past month publicly. But I know with a lot going on, it's kind of hard to kind of sit back and relax, even when sometimes you're doing college football games and here and there and everywhere. So what is your decompression method when you do actually have some time to yourself?
It actually matches up really nice for me. When the season ends, that's when Christmas break is starting to unfold, or at least we're close to that. With my daughter who's in college and my son who's finishing up high school. He's a senior now. And I just love spending time with family. So it's really nice to have the kids at home and have that time to reset, which is really, really good for everyone. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't always cooperate in the Carolinas to get out on the golf course in the off season. We can sneak that in occasionally. Hopefully there's one good day a week to get out and golf in the off season, but across the board, just time to relax, downtime, enjoy some football. You can't fully invest during the early part of the football season because you're wrapping up NASCAR. So jump in with both feet to football, a little college basketball, and spend time with family. That's usually what my off season looks like.
And now all of a sudden, at a blink of an eye, we're ready to go back to Daytona and kick off a season. Obviously, here in Phoenix, we are set for NASCAR Championship Weekend again already, October 31st through November 2nd. And you'll be taking us there with the Xfinity Series Championship on November 1st, but also Grinders Children's 500 Weekend here at Phoenix Raceway, also on the way to the championship preview. So you've spent a lot of time in Phoenix. You've watched the championship race grow here in Phoenix. Your thoughts on Phoenix Raceway being the venue as that championship host?
It's really a perfect spot. And you know this as well as anyone, being there in the Phoenix area and covering sports, and you understand the magnitude of that city when it comes to big time sports. And it really, you just go across the board, whether you're talking about the NCAA Final Four, college football championships, the Super Bowl, and think about the Waste Management Phoenix Open that will be going on out there in less than a week. So when you look at Phoenix, and not only is the weather there perfect to host folks who are coming in, but that venue and what they've done since they remodeled Phoenix Raceway is just outstanding. The crowd comes in droves, they sell it out. So really, when you match it all up, geography, the city itself, hosting championships, and that venue, it is the perfect spot for a championship race, and we look forward to being back there again at the end of 2025.
And looking back in this past offseason, you talked a lot about, being able to hang out with your family. Well, there's a long part of your career where you were a 7-day-a-week worker from Race Hub to traveling on the weekend for the races. And now, like you said, you have a daughter in college. Your youngest son, Kay, just finished his final season of high school football. How in the world do you balance, when it's not off-season time, your dream job with being a dad and being a husband?
I will say that it's always matched up pretty well for me. There were some times when my children were younger, especially when we lived in Indiana. You have no home games. And when your kids are young, that's when you need to be as involved as you possibly can. And you're running them everywhere, right? Because they can't do anything on their own when it comes to going events and that sort of thing. And so that's when it's really important to be a good partner with your spouse. And, unfortunately, that was a time when I was away quite a bit, when I was working for MRN Radio and even early in the speed days before we made the move to Charlotte. Really, once we moved to Charlotte, in 2011, at the end of 2011, that gave me a lot more home games. It exposed me to travel with race teams and through the NASCAR charter channels, which made my travel a lot more conducive to home life and less time away. You could really make the most of a race weekend when you can get in and get out and fly directly right in here to Charlotte. So that made my life a lot easier. And when I did a studio show, it was right down the road as opposed to have to get on an airplane and fly from Indiana to Charlotte to be in the studio. So that really is what made our lives a lot better. And our kids really have been raised here in the Charlotte area, which has been good for them. And our daughter goes to college in the South. She's not too far away, and hopefully those same opportunities will exist for my son. So it is a lot to balance, but I would say, you take the days during the week and you make up for some of the time you miss on the weekends. And when you look at the world where we are today, not many jobs are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Most people are working outside of those normal hours. And so even though there are events that I certainly have missed, I think most people are in that situation when you have a career that you chase. But we've been able to find, good balance. And I would say, too, that all the years that I worked with Fox, they were incredible to me at understanding that that was something that was very important to me in my life and accommodating me as best they could in those situations where there was something special going on and I had to choose one or the other.
And it's probably good to have those accommodations because you wore so many hats. Obviously, all the hats at home, and then all the hats that you've had over the years, broadcasting, motorsports, and sports in general. But through all those hats, all the roles on pit road, in the booth, race hub, you name it, you've had to get to know these drivers in so many unique ways. You have such a unique perspective from being on race hub for so long. You need to know everyone's story across all three series, plus ARCA, plus this, plus that. Do you have any favorite ways maybe to go and get to know these drivers week in and week out?
Well, I would tell you that I've been incredibly blessed in my career in that we at Fox started, 10, 12 years ago of really integrating the drivers into our coverage. And we know that with the Xfinity Series, but beyond that, we were doing it with Race Hub even before that. And I remember when I first started doing Xfinity stuff and the idea came about to have drivers, come join us. And I thought that was a little bit crazy and out of the box. And as it turned out, it really gave me an opportunity being side by side with them to develop this great respect with one another. And they got to come to our side and see how we did things. And I think it really changed their insight and their thought process. And so through that, I developed a lot of really good relationships with drivers. And I have told, young drivers and young broadcasters alike, the best way to have good coverage, whether you're on our side of it on the media side or you're on the competitor side and you want to get the coverage that you think you deserve, the best way to get there is develop relationships and do that when the camera is not on. And I've been fortunate over the course of my career to be in positions away from the sport to develop those relationships so that when you go to do your job, sit down interview, maybe you have to ask some tough questions when the news isn't so great. Those situations are far easier when you have a relationship outside of that driver media perspective. And so I've just been very, very fortunate because of the way we've always done business over the years to develop those relationships. And that's made my life a lot easier as a broadcaster and really probably helped me be more well-rounded in the way I'd go about my business.
And this all started from you getting wrangled into a show called Race Talk. I don't think a lot of people know this about you. You were not like born and then like 2 weeks later at the racetrack. This is something you kind of grew into as you're doing broadcasting. You're doing all these different sports. You were doing play-by-play. And then boom, here comes a motorsports opportunity. And you've been stuck with us now for 25 years. What was it about this sport that once you got wrangled in, you were here to stay?
Well, it's really funny. You mentioned Race Talk, and we were doing that show in Owensboro, Kentucky. And so that's where my motorsports career began. I'd been broadcasting, as you said, for a long time before that, doing stick and ball sports. But I started really doing racing in Owensboro, Kentucky. And as you know, there are many great drivers, crew members that come from Owensboro, Kentucky and the surrounding areas. And so there was this thought forever that I was born and raised there because I was just taking a different path to NASCAR, but I was living in Owensboro and most believed I grew up in it just like everyone else did. So that was one of the misconceptions out there a little bit in the early portion of my career. But that was a great way for me to start. And once I got in, the one thing that I have always admired about NASCAR, the two things, the passion and the loyalty. And I don't care if you're a driver, if you're a crew member, if you're an owner, if you're a fan, if you're a broadcaster. There is tremendous passion and loyalty in NASCAR from every corner of it. And I always was attracted to that. And, like anything else, you want to go where the opportunities are. And I was just fortunate to marry the experience I had as a broadcaster with the NASCAR, that was out there and working with MRN. And what was put in front of me really meshed well with my previous experience. And, as you said, 25 years later, here we are.
And like you said, you've been on radio, TV, you've been on pit road, in the booth, in the studio, all these different things. And of course, like you said, the stick and ball sports. I remember a couple of years ago watching the Territorial Cup right here in Arizona. I go, hey, it's Adam Alexander on the call. How cool is that? So you've been across the block, but is there an athlete, a celebrity? Do you have a dream interview, a dream person that you want to talk to with a microphone that you haven't quite got the opportunity to yet?
I don't know that there is anyone. There are a handful of people that I admired as a sports fan, growing up. I grew up, in the 90s when I was in high school. And I would say that's probably when my fandom peaked, because at that time I was just immersed in it. I didn't have children, and so I could dedicate so much time to watching sports and being a fan. And, I grew up in Indianapolis. I was a Colts fan. We had season tickets for a good while before we moved to North Carolina. And so that was when Peyton Manning was doing his thing. And I've always been a big Peyton fan. Michael Jordan is someone that I have tremendous admiration for as an athlete. And so now to see what he's doing in the NASCAR world is really cool. I've never met Michael. Very close to people who know Michael well. Obviously, I have a relationship with Denny Hamlin, but Michael Waltrip, Phil Parsons are around Michael quite a bit, and have been and been to his golf course. So, but I've never had the opportunity to meet Michael or interview Michael. So those are some people that I would say outside of the NASCAR world that I've always held in high regard, respected the level of which they competed and the success with which they have enjoyed. And in the NASCAR world, I've had a chance to talk to most everyone, and it's really cool to reflect back on that. I was looking at pictures the other day, and we did a segment getting ready for year 75 in NASCAR. We did a show with Jeff Gordon, Joey Logano, and Richard Petty. And, I saw that picture, and sometimes you don't appreciate what you're doing in the moment. And when you look back is when you really appreciate that. And I appreciate that now. And I think, 10 years down the road, that's something that I'll really hold in high regard. Some of the opportunities that I've had and the people I've had a chance to be around and interview, it's really been a tremendous blessing for me in my career.
And hopefully Michael Jordan will be added to that list for you. I remember I talked to Josh Simmons not too long ago, and I don't know if it was jealousy or not, but the fact that Talladega, Jamie Little happened to get to him first after the Tyler Reddick win. But hey, you're going to be at the racetrack a lot. Your day might come quicker than you think.
That's right. Well, and I will say this. I go back to what I said about what attracted me to NASCAR, and that's passion and loyalty. And Michael is someone that we know, grew up in NASCAR country, and he's always been a NASCAR fan, kind of a closet NASCAR fan. If you didn't know that, if you didn't know his following of motorsports and his love for it, you probably wouldn't be aware. But now we're starting to see that. And not only has he been loyal to NASCAR and motorsports over the years, but now we're really starting to see that passion with him being a team owner with Denny Hamlin at 23-11, and the way he celebrates their success has been really, really fun to watch.
Well, Adam, your passion, your loyalty to this sport as well has been obvious throughout many, many years. Appreciate you coming on this show and appreciate all that you do for the sport. Can't wait to see you almost every single Saturday here for some NASCAR Xfinity Series racing on the CW.
Well, the anticipation is at a high level, and while I like to enjoy the last few days of the off season, I would be lying if I didn't say I'm looking forward to the campaign starting more this year than I ever have. There's going to be a lot going on in 2025, a lot of new items on the horizon, and so we're really, really looking forward to getting it going at Daytona.
Absolutely. I hope to see you there at Daytona, but for now, appreciate your time and enjoy this season, Adam.
Thanks. Have a great year.